Today, we're taking a closer look at the intense public reaction surrounding the story often described as catastrophic. Josh Shapiro reveals shock details of deadly explosion at a Pennsylvania nursing home, and breaking down what has been reported, what has been confirmed, and why this incident has drawn such widespread attention. The story centers on a deadly explosion that occurred at a nursing home in Pennsylvania, an event that immediately raised serious concerns about safety, oversight, and emergency preparedness in facilities meant to care for some of the most vulnerable members of society. According to official statements and media reports, the explosion resulted in tragic loss of life and injuries, leaving families, staff, and the broader community in shock. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro described the incident as catastrophic, a word that reflects not only the physical destruction but also the emotional toll on residents, loved ones, and first responders. In public remarks, Shapiro emphasized the seriousness of the situation and the state's commitment to understanding exactly how such a disaster could occur in a regulated care facility. His comments underscored that this was not being treated as a routine accident, but as a major failure that demands accountability. One of the most striking elements of Shapiro's statements was the focus on unanswered questions. How did the explosion happen? Were there warning signs that were missed? And were all safety protocols being followed at the time? While investigations were still ongoing at the time of reporting, Shapiro made it clear that the state would not shy away from difficult findings, even if they revealed systemic problems or lapses in enforcement. The explosion also reignited a broader conversation about the safety of nursing homes and long-term care facilities. These institutions are responsible for residents who often have limited mobility or medical conditions that make evacuation and emergency response far more complicated. In situations like this, even a small delay or oversight can turn deadly. Shapiro's remarks highlighted the need for constant vigilance, regular inspections, and clear emergency plans that are not just written on paper, but actively practiced. Public reaction to the story has been intense. Many viewers and readers expressed outrage and grief, questioning how such a tragedy could happen in a place meant to provide care and protection. Others called for stricter regulations, harsher penalties for violations, and greater transparency from both facility operators and state agencies. At the same time, officials urged caution against jumping to conclusions before the investigation is complete. Explosions can result from a range of causes, including gas leaks, equipment failures, or structural issues, and determining responsibility requires careful forensic analysis. Shapiro acknowledged this, stressing that facts and evidence would guide the state's response rather than speculation or political pressure. Another key aspect of the governor's response was his recognition of first responders and emergency personnel. Firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and medical staff were praised for their rapid response. Under extremely dangerous conditions, their actions, according to officials, helped prevent an even greater loss of life. As the investigation continues, the outcome is expected to influence policy decisions going forward, whether that means changes to inspection procedures, updated safety requirements, or increased funding for oversight. The explosion has already become a reference point in discussions about reforming long-term care safety in Pennsylvania. In reviewing this story, it's important to separate confirmed information from emotional headlines. The term shock details reflects the gravity of what has been shared publicly, but the full picture will only emerge once investigators complete their work and release their findings. Until then, the focus remains on honoring the victims, supporting affected families, and ensuring that lessons are learned to prevent anything like this from happening again. This incident serves as a sobering reminder that safety regulations exist for a reason, and when they fail, or are not properly enforced, the consequences can be devastating. The coming months will be critical in determining accountability and shaping how Pennsylvania, and potentially other states, approach nursing home safety in the future. As more information gradually comes to light, attention has also turned to the regulatory framework that governs nursing homes in Pennsylvania. Questions are being raised about how often facilities are inspected, how violations are handled, and whether past warnings or citations may have gone unaddressed. For many families with loved ones in long-term care, this incident has triggered fear and uncertainty about whether their relatives are truly safe. Governor Shapiro has repeatedly stated that transparency will be a key part of the process moving forward. He indicated that once investigators determine the cause of the explosion, the findings will be made public, even if they reveal uncomfortable truths. This stance has been seen by some as an attempt to restore public trust, especially in the wake of growing skepticism toward institutional accountability. Legal experts have also weighed in, noting that incidents of this magnitude often lead to lawsuits and potential criminal inquiries, depending on what the investigation uncovers. If negligence, code violations, or ignored safety risks are confirmed, facility operators could face severe legal and financial consequences. This possibility has only intensified calls for reform from advocacy groups focused on elder care and patient safety. Another layer to the story involves the emotional aftermath for survivors. Residents who lived through the explosion may face long-term physical and displacement. Being forced to evacuate a familiar environment can be deeply destabilizing for elderly individuals, particularly those with cognitive impairments. Shapiro acknowledged this reality, emphasizing the importance of providing counseling, medical follow-up, and stable housing arrangements for displaced residents. The tragedy has also sparked a wider national conversation. While this incident occurred in Pennsylvania, nursing home safety is a concern across the United States. Aging infrastructure, staffing shortages, and financial pressures have long plagued the industry. Critics argue that without stronger oversight and investment, similar disasters could happen elsewhere. Media coverage of the explosion has played a significant role in shaping public perception. Dramatic language and emotional headlines have drawn attention to the story, but they have also contributed to confusion and speculation. Shapiro's careful wording in press briefings appeared aimed at balancing urgency with responsibility, reminding the public that facts must come before blame. Community response has been equally notable. Vigils, memorials, and fundraisers have been organized to honor those who lost their lives and to support affected families. Local leaders have spoken about the need for unity and compassion, stressing that behind every statistic is a human life with a story, relationships, and dignity. Looking ahead, the final investigative report is expected to be a turning point. Its conclusions could lead to new legislation, tighter enforcement of safety codes, and a reevaluation of how nursing homes are monitored statewide. For Governor Shapiro, the handling of this crisis may also become a defining moment, testing his leadership during a time of profound loss and public scrutiny. Ultimately, this story is not just about a single explosion or a single facility. It is about systemic responsibility, the value placed on elderly lives, and the moral obligation to protect those who cannot protect themselves. As the process unfolds, the hope expressed by officials and families alike is that meaningful change will come from tragedy, ensuring that such a catastrophic event is never repeated. As pressure continues to mount, state agencies involved in health, safety, and emergency management are now facing closer scrutiny themselves. Critics argue that even the strongest regulations are meaningless if enforcement is inconsistent or underfunded. This has led to renewed debate about whether oversight bodies have the resources, staffing, and authority necessary to prevent disasters before they occur. Governor Shapiro has acknowledged these concerns, signaling openness to reviewing not only facility-level failures, but also potential gaps. Within state systems, families of the victims have begun speaking out more publicly, sharing emotional accounts of last conversations, unanswered phone calls, and the devastating moment they learned of the explosion. Their stories have added a deeply personal dimension to the tragedy, shifting the focus from policy discussions to human loss. Many have called for justice, stating that apologies and promises of reform are not enough without concrete accountability. At the same time, Nursing home operators across the state are reportedly reassessing their own safety measures. Some facilities have initiated internal audits, reviewed emergency response plans, and scheduled additional inspections in an effort to reassure residents and families. While these steps are seen as proactive, advocates argue they should not take a tragedy to prompt action that should already be standard practice. Governor Shapiro's language has remained firm but measured, reinforcing the idea that this incident must serve as a wake-up call. He has stressed that protecting vulnerable populations is a fundamental responsibility of government, not an optional priority. His insistence on a thorough and independent investigation has been framed as essential to ensuring credibility and long-term reform. Political analysts have noted that the outcome of this case could have ripple effects beyond Pennsylvania. Other states are closely watching how the investigation unfolds and how leadership responds. If significant regulatory changes are implemented, they could influence national standards for long-term care facilities, particularly regarding infrastructure safety and emergency preparedness. There is also growing attention on the role of technology and modernization. Aging buildings, outdated gas systems, and insufficient monitoring tools are increasingly being cited as risks within older facilities. Experts suggest that investment in modern detection systems, routine infrastructure upgrades, and real-time monitoring could dramatically reduce the likelihood of similar incidents in the future. As days turn into weeks, the story remains unresolved, but its impact is already clear. Trust has been shaken, grief remains fresh, and demands for reform are growing louder. For many, this tragedy has exposed uncomfortable truths about how society cares for its elderly, and how quickly safety can be compromised when oversight fails. In the end, the hope shared by families, officials, and advocates is that the lives lost will not be forgotten or reduced to a headline. Instead, they want this catastrophe to become a catalyst for lasting change, one that places dignity, safety, and accountability at the center of long-term care, where they should have been all along.